the third count is possession of a firearm by a person who is an unlawful user or addicted to a controlled substance. Again, 3 counts, gun charges. Let's bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Because, Pierre, as you know, Americans who've been following this story had heard our reporting in recent months. There had been a plea deal in the work, crumbled in the 11th hour, and now not long afterward, the special counsel David Weiss, who was appointed special counsel by the Attorney General Merrick Garland in this case, been investigating for several years. After word of a plea deal, and then it crumbled, now come these federal charges, 3 counts for Hunter Biden.
David, Hunter Biden is seeing the consequences of that plea deal falling apart. It's in tatters, and today he stands indicted on 3 felony counts. And it all stems from the fact that he was addicted to crack cocaine. According to prosecutors, at one point in 2018, he was using crack cocaine every 15 minutes. And later that year, they claimed that he walked into a gun store in Delaware and filled out a form to buy a Colt revolver. And in that form, he stated that he was not a user of drugs, that he was not addicted to any kind of narcotics. That was not true. And today he's been charged with those felony counts in relation to being in illegal possession of a gun, David. Now, as you pointed out, this was all a part of the plea deal involving his taxes not paid, and this was a diversion deal by which if he had agreed to that plea deal, he would not have been prosecuted on this gun charge. Now, the special counsel continues to investigate his tax situation and his financial dealings abroad, but today he's now indicted on felony gun charges, David.
And again, just to help guide our viewers through this, and we have been reporting on it quite extensively here, there are 2 issues at play that we have reported on, Pierre. First, the taxes that Hunter Biden owed that have since been paid back, though he faces potentially charges involving those taxes. And then these separate gun charges, which, as of that plea deal, it was believed by Hunter Biden's team that this part of it, at least, would go away. When that plea deal fell apart, now we have seen what's happened instead. The tax issue is still unresolved, but now we have 3 counts on the gun issue itself.
Absolutely. And his attorneys would maintain that they believe that this diversion agreement regarding the gun was still intact. Obviously, the special counsel, David Weiss, does not believe that is the case and went forward with these charges. I think Hunter Biden's team had hoped that the judge might intervene at some point and say that that diversion agreement was still intact. But clearly, the special counsel moving forward with this case. And now, again, if convicted, he faces up to 10 years maximum in prison. Now, his attorneys have pointed out that these are not the kind of cases that the Justice Department typically brings. A single case involving filling out a form illegally, if you will, that typically to get a gun charge like this, something else would be attached to it, like drug dealing or some kind of crime of violence. They believe that this is highly unusual, and they will make that case now, obviously, in court.
Pierre Thomas, our Chief Justice correspondent. Pierre, stick with us here on the breaking news. I want to bring in our Chief Legal Analyst, Dan Abrams. Dan, you heard Pierre bring up that point that in his years of covering the Justice Department and now Hunter Biden's team making this point that this is a very rare charge to bring forward. How rare is it? Have you been able to find, in looking at other cases, anything similar?
I haven't been able to find anything that matches this based on the same set of facts. And what do I mean by that? I mean where there were no other crimes committed by the defendant, that the gun was not used in a crime, right? That's another key factor, that the defendant had no criminal record, and it was just one gun. That is incredibly unusual to charge someone with this crime in connection with those sets of facts. Now, remember, this was initially connected to the tax case. And one of the reasons that the plea deal fell apart was because the judge was saying, well, I don't understand the connection between the deal you're making on this gun charge and the plea on the tax cases. Meaning, as Pierre pointed out, this wasn't really a plea deal with regard to the gun charge that they had made. It was what's called a non-prosecution agreement. It was basically saying, if you adhere to certain things, if you stay off drugs, if a list of requirements, if you are able for a certain period of time to achieve that, we will not prosecute you. That's different than a plea deal, which was the case with regard to the tax crimes. And that's why the judge ended up saying, I don't understand what you think my role is with regard to the gun case. And the fundamental reason that the plea deal fell apart was with regard to whether Hunter Biden could be charged with any crimes in the future. So that deal falls apart. Now you're seeing the first, result of that deal falling apart, which is this new charge, unusual charge based on the very fact-specific case at issue, but it's a very serious one. By the way, more serious than the tax cases. This is a felony here. Tax cases were misdemeanors.
Very serious felony charges, you point out, 3 counts. And Dan, if it is this rare, why do you suppose the special counsel moved forward here?
Well, look, that's to some degree a loaded question, right? Because some people would say, the Hunter Biden team would say, politics. David Weiss was under enormous pressure. He had to do this. The other way you could look at this is to say that when a plea deal falls apart, one of the results of that can be that the book gets thrown at the person. That we had an agreement in place. You don't want to finish up with our plea agreement. Okay, fine. We're going to then throw the book at you on every possible charge that we could have. So it definitely depends on how you look at it. But there's no doubt that Hunter Biden's team has a legitimate argument about how rare this is. The question is going to be, as a legal matter, do they have a legitimate argument that non-prosecution agreement should stand now? They're basically saying it was signed. It was sealed. It's done. You can't take it back. The government is saying not true because the judge rejected it, and they say that's enough to move forward. And, most lawyers, I think, believe the special counsel probably has the better argument, but it's a legitimate argument that the Hunter Biden team is going to make.
Dan Abrams, our chief legal analyst. Dan, stick with us as well. Let's get to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Mary, any reaction from the White House?
Not yet, David. We have asked but haven't heard back yet. But in recent weeks and months, the president has really tried not to comment on the specifics of this investigation or Hunter Biden's legal woes. He wants to maintain the independence of the Justice Department, but he has been very vocal about his support for his son. You hear often the president, the first lady speaking of how proud they are of Hunter, how much they trust him and have faith in him, how proud they are of his recovery. But there is no question, David, that this White House just a few weeks ago, just a couple months ago, thought all of this was behind them when that plea deal was struck. Of course, that fell apart. And now you have the president's son being indicted by his own Justice Department and possibly facing a trial right in the middle of his father's re-election campaign. You couple that with the fact that this is just 2 days after House Republicans launched that impeachment inquiry into President Biden, very much centering around Hunter Biden. Of course, there has been no evidence brought forward of any wrongdoing by the president, but all of this taken together shows again that Republicans are not going to let this issue drop. And we know that politically this is going to present a real headache for this administration, for this re-election campaign, and no doubt be a distraction, David.
Mary, thank you. Jonathan Karl, our chief Washington correspondent. And John, big picture here, when you look at this, I gather the Hunter Biden's legal team is going to say this is not a case of Hunter Biden getting special treatment because he's the son of the president and being protected. It's actually the opposite, I gather, is what they will argue. And it's really interesting over on the Hill that many Republicans aren't necessarily happy with these charges. They're more interested, obviously, in the investigation, the inquiry of this week that's been announced into potential business dealings and questions about those business dealings. So you're going to have people really on all sides here asking questions about this.
Oh, absolutely, Davis. This will satisfy just about nobody. A couple things very important to understand here. First is that David Weiss was appointed by Donald Trump to his role as a U.S. attorney and then elevated to the level of a special counsel by Joe Biden. The Biden White House has said they weren't going to interfere with the investigation, let the chips fall where they may. What the Hunter Biden team says is, yes, this is a case of special treatment. It is a case of special treatment because there's no way this charge would have been brought if Hunter's last name was not Biden. But that said, you hear Republicans, they've already held hearing after hearing on Capitol Hill and pledged many more about Hunter Biden. But it's not about this gun charge. It's not even about the tax charge. They are making allegations about Hunter Biden's foreign dealings, his work on the board of the Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, his work with another Chinese company on a natural gas project. They are making allegations about that. Again, no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing, no evidence of any direct involvement of the president in what his son was doing. In fact, what you will hear from the Hunter Biden team is that this U.S. attorney, now special counsel, David Weiss, has been investigating for some 5 years, David, an investigation that started in the Trump administration and included efforts to look into allegations of wrongdoing regarding Hunter Biden's foreign dealings, and he's come up with nothing. Instead, he's come up with, on one hand, the allegation, that he was late in paying his taxes, and this gun charge, which, again, is a very unusual charge to see go this far. So this will resolve just about nothing, but it will mean that Hunter Biden again is going to have to be in court, and this time he's facing a felony indictment.
John Carl up on the Hill with the big picture as far as this certainly not pleasing anyone. And in the life of Hunter Biden now, he faces felony counts, which could bring prison time if convicted. Aaron Katersky, our senior investigative reporter, politics aside, these are very serious charges, rare, but very serious.
They carry a maximum penalty taken together of up to 25 years in prison. It's unlikely, given Hunter Biden's lack of criminal record, that he would ever serve that much time if he is convicted. But David, they does go to show you how serious these charges potentially could be for the president's son. And there's no guarantee that he's going to try and resolve the charges the way he did the first time. In fact, his defense attorney has recently pointed to a decision that came down in a federal appeals court recently that said drug use alone should not be disqualifying as a prerequisite for owning a gun. And so the defense thinks they may have something to stand on if they take this case to trial. Of course, that he was prepared to resolve this with a non-prosecution agreement in the past may work against him. We don't know how that would ultimately work out, but there's no question a jury could have seen that in the past. So he has a lot of thinking to do, and potentially, David, more charges to come. Tax charges, which the special counsel has said would likely come in either California or Washington. And we believe the special counsel has broad license to investigate everything else that they've been investigating over the past 5 years and take a second look at things like Burisma and the laptop, what have become almost political buzzwords for Republicans.
And Aaron, we know that plea deal fell apart, but is there any word that they would work on perhaps another kind of framework for a deal moving forward?
They could certainly try, David, especially given the severity, the potential severity of these 3 felony charges. But it does work 2 ways. If a jury takes a look at this ultimately at trial and says, hey, you were prepared to plead guilty to this stuff, that must mean you're guilty now. So they may want to work on some other way to resolve this. On the other hand, the defense may feel emboldened and think the special counsel has gone too far.
Let's bring in John Santucci. Aaron, thank you. John helps lead the editorial team that digs into these documents. And John, this is going to be head-spinning for viewers at home, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, to try to follow the events here. Again, as John Carl and Dan Abrams aptly pointed out, there are 2 parts to this that our viewers have heard our reporting in recent weeks. There was the tax part, not paying taxes. They've been paid now, but at the time, there was a deal in the works that plea to the tax charge. And then we'll have a diversion agreement when it comes to the gun charge. We'll put it aside if you agree to follow certain stipulations and stick to them. That all fell apart. So now what we're looking at today is only the gun charges and 3 felony counts. But again, for people at home trying to follow this politically in this country, it's going to be head spinning now that they're seeing that instead of a plea deal, they've got felony charges against the president's son.
It's extremely complicated, David, and almost like whiplash. I mean, you just have to remember, you talked about we were just recently here, just to emphasize for our viewers, David, that was just 2 months ago. We were all here having this conversation with you in real time as our team was running out of court for what seemed, David, to be a normal day process, if not a rubber stamp. This plea deal was signed, sealed, and delivered. And as Aaron said, Hunter Biden's lawyers were ready to go, thinking this was over. Anything but that, and today has now proven that. But I do think, David, the point that John Carl made is extremely important, and that is about what Republicans are going to say in reacting to this, because we know Donald Trump uses Hunter Biden, special counsel, and all the other buzzwords on the campaign trail every day. I can tell you, David, texting with one House Republican member in real time, I said, what's the initial reaction to all of this? They wrote me back, David, we want more, we want a lot more. And I think that's what you're going to see in the coming months, in part because of this growing impeachment probe that's happening there. It's obviously an impeachment probe that's going to be looking into the president, but it's also going to bring in Hunter Biden and the Biden family. And I can tell you, David, just even last night, talking to a senior advisor to the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, I'm told that as far as House Republicans are concerned, they are going to move very quickly with this probe. And a source telling me, David, just last night, this is going to be a matter of weeks, not months for us. You are going to start us to see pull back, as they say, the curtain and look into the Biden family.
John Santucci, when your sources tell you we want more, and we mean more when it comes to charges against Hunter Biden, you know, people watching this are going to say, what does that mean? Because at least for now, we haven't seen put out in front of the public, in front of voters, any sort of key evidence that's driving the inquiry.
Yeah, so David, actually, while we were talking, another person that works for the former president texted me and said, where's FARA? Now, what does that mean for our viewers? So FARA relates to foreign agent registration. Now, if that sounds foreign to us, it means that a person is doing work on behalf of a foreign government, but not registered. If that sounds familiar, that's because Paul Manafort, who ran Donald Trump's first presidential campaign for a portion of 2016, was charged under FARA. And when we were in court, David, 2 months ago, as the team was running out and reporting that the plea deal was falling apart, we know that the judge in that case asked David Weiss's team, well, are you still investigating? Are you still looking at this? And the only clue we got in those proceedings, David, was David Weiss's team saying to the judge, we're still investigating, we're still looking. The judge bringing up FARA, the team saying, yes, we are looking into that. So you know, David, that Republicans latched on to that in real time. We latched on to that, looking to see, well, what could they be looking into? Aaron Katersky reported just a few seconds ago here about the business dealings with China, with Ukraine, Burisma, those buzzwords that we've been talking about. So that's something that they're going to see. They want to see action here, David.
But again, a reminder here, and John Carl pointed this out, they've been investigating for 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm. They've been investigating for 5 years, as the special counsel was previously just the sitting U.S. attorney. But as we saw, once the plea deal fell apart, David Weiss reaching out to Attorney General Merrick Garland, asking for that protection, asking to be named as special counsel. Let me keep digging. Let me keep doing our work. Let's turn over everything. So at the end of the day, David, 5+ years now of looking into it, you could make the argument we've turned over everything.
John Santucci, thank you as always. Legal analyst Dan Abrams, I want to come back to you on the Second Amendment issue that surely becomes part of this argument now in connection with the 3 counts that are now specific to the gun charge. Taxes aside, what we're witnessing today is David Weiss, now special counsel David Weiss, indicting the president's son, and we can't underscore how significant this is to have a sitting president's son indicted on criminal charges, but 3 counts relating to gun charges here.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Second Amendment piece of this, because it is interesting, right? The idea that Hunter Biden, who people associate, of course, with his father and Democrats, could be making an argument that this sort of charge violates the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, that the idea that you can be prevented from owning a gun based on drug use, some will argue, and has been argued, is a violation of the Second Amendment. So expect that argument, and as Aaron Katersky was talking about, there's already been one ruling on this, but expect that argument will work its way up with strange bedfellows, right? The idea that typically conservatives who make challenges based on the Second Amendment might be siding with Hunter Biden on this. We shall see how much that works its way through the courts, but it does become a critical argument for him to make.
Dan Abrams, thank you. I want to get to Rachel Scott live up on Capitol Hill. And Rachel, you've been reporting just this week on Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who announced that he was launching the impeachment inquiry involving President Biden, not laying out any key evidence before the American people as of yet, even though weeks ago said he would hold a full vote in the House. He did not go ahead with that vote, instead announcing that the inquiry will begin nonetheless. I'm curious what the reaction is to these gun charges. John Carl pointing out that many Republicans won't be happy with this. They want to see something happen. Questions involving the business dealings, not necessarily these gun charges. What are you hearing so far?
Yeah, and David, I can tell you I've already talked to a number of House Republicans who call these charges serious, but I can tell you that James Comer, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, said that of all the crimes he believed that Hunter Biden has committed, he said the gun charge is at the bottom of that list. The focus here is on this impeachment inquiry into allegations that President Biden benefited from his son Hunter Biden's business dealings when he was serving as vice president. But I have been here on Capitol Hill for days. I have been pressing Republicans on what concrete evidence they have of any wrongdoing committed by President Biden. And David, I could tell you, even the Republicans that have been pushing for this impeachment inquiry have acknowledged that they're still looking for evidence of any wrongdoing by the president and whether or not he committed any high crimes and misdemeanors. They're sort of searching for that evidence. And I can tell you House Speaker Kevin McCarthy not ruling out that this impeachment inquiry could drag into next year against the backdrop of the 2024 election, David.
Rachel Scott, our thanks to you. One final thought from John Carl, because John, we don't need to tell our viewers at home. They know we're in the middle of the race for the White House already campaign, in full speed here. Now we've got the president's son criminally indicted by special counsel, a former U.S. attorney appointed by Donald Trump, as you pointed out earlier. And you can already sort of see the dividing lines. You're going to have supporters of the president say that this charge is so rare, a gun charge involving someone who is dealing with addiction issues. You'll have people at the other end of the spectrum say he shouldn't have any special treatment. In fact, we want to see more amid all these questions about potential wrongdoing with business dealings, although they haven't laid out any key evidence before the American people. And all of this, again, playing out right in the middle of this campaign.
Right out in the middle of a campaign. And David, what you can be guaranteed is that Hunter Biden, the president's son, will be a central focus of the Republican campaign, both whoever the eventual Republican presidential nominee is, especially if it's Donald Trump, and Republicans in Congress as they wage those congressional elections. They are making Hunter Biden the symbol of the White House. And there are Democrats who would perhaps like to see the president distance himself from his own son and his own, and his son's activities. But I can also tell you this, David, that Joe Biden is somebody who has lost two of his children, one as a very young girl, and of course Beau Biden, his son, who died of brain cancer. And there is nothing that this president is going to do to distance himself from his son. As he has said over and over again, that he loves Hunter. He is as close to Hunter as he is to anybody in his life. And the White House will point out that despite all of that, he has done nothing to interfere with this criminal prosecution and has let this go on, has allowed his attorney general to appoint a special counsel, the special counsel that brought these charges. So you have both a political drama and also a real family drama at play that, as you said, is only just beginning.
Well said, John Carl, live up on the Hill. John, our thanks to you as well. Again, the breaking news at this hour involving President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, now charged with 3 felony counts related to gun possession. 2 of the counts are false statements, one involving the purchase of the firearm, the second related information required to be kept by a federal firearms license dealer over the course of having the gun. The third count is possession of the gun itself. Dan Abrams, our legal analyst, pointing out how rare this kind of charge is. That will certainly be among the issues immediately debated moving forward. But again, Hunter Biden charged with 3 felony counts. We'll have much more later tonight on World News Tonight. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live, abcnews.com, and I'll be back with the entire team a little later for the evening news. I'm David Muir in New York. Until then, have a good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.